Welcome to Meet the Game Changers. I'm your host, Rev Kev, and this is the space where we celebrate everyday people doing extraordinary things to shape our world for the better. These are the voices and the stories that inspire us to dream bigger and act bolder. So let's get ready to welcome today's extraordinary game changing guest. Let's go.
This is Meet the Game Changers with Rev Kev, where we dive into the stories of people transforming our world one bold move at a time.
Today's guest is Morgan Curtis, a coach, facilitator, and author whose life work is rooted in truth telling, ancestral healing, and redistributing inherited wealth. Her journey has taken her from a childhood of privilege to frontline movements for justice and reparations. Now, as a new mother, Morgan is reimagining legacy in real time. She joins us to share how she turned reflection into responsibility and how all of us can begin to reclaim our story. Morgan, welcome to the show. Hey, Mom.
Hi, Rev Kev.
Y-
Thank you
y-
for that
y- y-
introduction. So good to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And you are indeed a mother in many ways, mother to a phenomenal movement that we'll get a chance to talk about, and mother to a little one. How's motherhood, real quick? Just a couple bars.
Mm, so many things. I've been saying to people that all the cliches are true. It's like the hardest thing I ever did, the biggest love I've ever known, the least sleep I ever got. It's
Well,
big, big ups, big downs.
congratulations. Keep cherishing it. So you and I know each other from our journey as classmates at Harvard Divinity School, and that's where I discovered how much of a game changer you were. So let's get started at the beginning,
Mm.
because your story is what really has inspired me in so many ways. What did family and home look like for you growing up? What values were passed down to you early on?
Mhm. Yeah, I was born and raised in London, England. My parents were American expats. Um, Strange word for immigrants. They're white. And I was raised in a family with a lot of, yeah, comforts and privileges. And yeah, some of the kind of class indicators in my childhood were private school and ponies. I really still love ponies.
You
And
still have porn.
I still love ponies. Um, but I was raised to be thankful for all that we had, but not with any analysis or history for how did we come to be living a life that where all my needs were met and more, and others didn't. And so it took my own journey to figure out the connection between my family having too much and others having too little.
So when did that begin? About how old were you when you started to become curious about your family's wealth and history?
So I started a ancestry.com account when I was 11. For some reason, I was curious.
11.
Yeah.
Nerd.
Yeah. I don't think it was a school project. I think I just somehow was interested in.
That's even more nerdy. It
Yes,
wasn't a school project.
extra nerdy.
Yeah.
Um, and I was curious about who were these people that came before me, and, um but I didn't have, uh, people around me enough to support me to really see into that history. That came later. But another thing I would name too from those kind of childhood years were like a deep love for the earth. I'm really grateful for having inherited that from my family, people that are very connected to this natural world of ours. And so I felt the pain of the destruction that was happening and continues to happen. I remember one time I was reading National Geographic Kids magazine, and I was reading about the tar sands in Canada, massive destructive industrial projects. And I remember crying about this and walking into the kitchen and telling my dad, and him saying, "Oh, your grandfather invested in that project. It's been very
Mm.
profitable." So I started drawing those connections, though it wasn't until later and getting a broader education that I was able to really situate my family in the history of this country.
So, how did your understanding shift once you started to connect the dots and get an understanding of this history and your family's influence?
Yeah, so when I was in college, it was the time of the fossil fuel divestment movement taking off. This was students on college campuses across the US and around the world saying, will you please pull the money that supports this institution out of the fossil fuel industry because they are destroying our futures? And yeah, that childhood love for the earth led me right there. That implication of my own family in that destruction led me right there. And it was really in that space where my fellow students, mostly students of color, started to orient me to, oh, the ecological crisis, the climate crisis. That's just the latest symptom of a long story of colonialism, of capitalism, of white supremacy, a story that said some people's lives are worth more than others and that destruction is permitted to benefit the few. And as I started to hear that narrative, which again wasn't coming to me in the classroom, was coming through my peers, it wasn't that hard for me to connect my family to it. I heard colonialism and I was like, "Oh, that's my grandfather talking about how proud he is to be descended from the earliest American settlers." And capitalism, that's both my grandfathers were investment bankers. And white supremacy, no one ever talked about race in my childhood, but it's becoming very clear to me that yes, I am white. And that was uh, a tumultuous time for me, beginning to take in, okay, I'm really implicated in this story that is being revealed to me.
So, how did dinner table conversations shift after you had these epiphanies and awarenesses?
Yeah. Um, I've been on a whole journey with my family, with particularly my dad. I think for him, me beginning to question his family history is a lot of the early American history that I was looking at. It was hard for him. It was hard for him to hear what sounded like me disowning our family or rejecting our family. But it that didn't really slow me down. The more I was learning, the more clear it was becoming to me that like deep and profound injustice had been happening over centuries and continuing still today. So in my yeah, especially in those early 20s, I was furious and my dad was kind of the living face of this whole story and I was tremendously upset and wanting him to change. Um, so initially, I really, yeah, drove a big wedge between us through our different viewpoints of what our family was about and standing for.
So, how is he responding? Because this is huge. On one hand, he's very proud of what he and his family have accomplished. And I'm imagining his feeling is that you should be grateful
Mhm,
for all that you have and all the privilege that comes along with it.
mhm.
So, how is he responding?
Yeah,
I mean, paint the picture.
yeah. Um, 2 moments come to mind. One time my dad said to me, he said, "Morgan, you won't stop talking about the white supremacist capitalist heteropatriarchy." And I was like, "Yeah, that's right." And he said, "Well, white, yes, I am. Like capitalist, I am. Hetero, yes, I am. Patriarchy, I'm your father." And so he wasn't able to hear any of that analysis and systems without experiencing it as like a direct attack on who he was. And another moment comes to mind. He said to me, "I thought that the purpose of my career was to maximize the inheritance of my children, and you're asking me to question all of that." Which looking back now, I'm like, that is I see that I was getting at some of the, like, fundamental parts of his identity and choices about this lifetime, and there's vulnerability in that, but at the time, I was definitely just like, "Yep, I am asking you to question all of that."
And apparently he began to thaw a bit, did you say?
There's been thawing. Like I said, it's been a whole journey, and there's been yeah, an initial powerful moment was my father choosing to also divest from fossil fuels, his personal investments, after I did with mine, the money that I inherited from him. That was the first thing I did was divest from the fossil fuel industry, and, um, so that was a big move of him.
Well, let's not gloss over that. I
Yeah.
think this is one of the
Mm,
things that made me and most of your classmates at Harvard and people across the nation who learned about your story do the double take. Like, what? She did what with her inheritance?
mm,
Tell us about that
mm,
moment of discovering your inheritance and then deciding, well, I'll let you say it.
yeah. So I was 21 when I learned that there was a investment account in my name, and I, as I mentioned, was a divestment activist, and I was like, "Oh no, investment is the opposite of divestment. This is not what I want to be doing." And the very same corporations I was campaigning against and learning of their immense human rights abuses now and across time, like and ecological impacts, those very same corporations were the ones that were in my personal portfolio. And so I was so clear of like, this is an uncrossable line for me. Like, I'm unwilling to profit from the destruction of the earth and the extraction of labor and life from my fellow human beings. Like, that's not how I want to support my life. Like, even if this money could help me have a easier or smoother or more comfortable life, that wouldn't be worth it to me to have caused suffering elsewhere to make that possible for me. And so that logic pretty quickly led me to actually need to get out of the stock market entirely. Um, I inherited about $600,000 and it was entirely invested in the global stock market. Large corporations traded, and yeah, I was like, I actually can't see how a company on that scale, accountable to its shareholders, can be a responsible steward of, yeah, workers' rights and the earth. And I think there's a fundamental contradiction here, and I don't want to be part of it. And so that was my next step, was getting out of the stock market entirely. And then as I learned more about both my family history and the history of this country, I saw like, oh, actually, the fact that there even is wealth in my family, in my white family that's been on this continent for 400 years, that participated in these grotesque, violent wars against Native people, enslavement of folks of both African and Native descent. As I learned that history, it was so clear to me that this money's not mine. Like, this money, this privilege that my family accumulated was off the backs of other people, and I needed to return that money in some way, and so that's been my journey, has been listening for and figuring out how to let the money flow back towards the communities that it was taken from, and so that's like, yeah, redistributing that money primarily to Black and Indigenous-led land projects and organizing and people. Um, and I've been so, yeah, that journey has changed my life. I'm so grateful for it.
I'm sure. As you are sharing this story, I have to ask you, and I don't know if I've ever asked you, where did you
Mm.
find it? Where did you find it within yourself, this high moral core, this? Because I'm imagining maybe there's some folks who are like, "Are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? You're holier than thou. What are you? Who are you? Like, how do you get the who does that?" You know,
Uh-huh.
what was that, Morgan?
I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that, Rick. I mean, I think our lives happen one step at a time. That I didn't like wake up one morning and suddenly understand or see everything I would eventually come to see. And I think, yeah, it was really like friends and teachers and mentors and the social movements of our time that were like slowly teaching me over time that, yeah, these histories that we're part of and these systems that we're entwined in, like it just all kind of got slowly revealed to me. And as I yeah, as I felt it, I think I've always been someone that feels things. That
Mm.
yeah, it was just, okay, well, what do I do now? What's the next step now that I see what I see? And I
You're
think oh,
so and you're so soft-spoken about it. You're so demure in your manner, but you are yelling to the top of your soul as you are taking this on. I mean, and as you are engaging with your family and reckoning with this history, this is a cry in the wilderness. This is, and
mm,
yet your packaging, how you're contained, is pretty. It's just pretty remarkable.
mm,
Um, how you manage to convey this. I would love for you to keep doing deep dives to explore this unique soul signature that you have that has brought you to be able to do something so game changing and incredible. Let
mhm,
me just take a moment to say to those that are joining us, you're watching Meet the Game Changers. I'm your host, Rev Kev. This is the platform where we bring you everyday people doing extraordinary things to change our world for the better. And I'm so grateful to have my colleague and Harvard sister and friend in justice, Morgan Curtis, joining us. And she's been sharing her story with us today. And I hope by now, if you haven't already started to have your soul kind of sit to the edge of itself, as we share more, I think you will. Let's see what's happening in
mm,
the chat room. I got a comment here. Will says, "Thank you for your honesty, how you deal with your family's role in colonialism and white supremacy. Such important work that I also explore and atone for. It's good anti-racist work." Thank you, Will. I really appreciate your comments. Feel free to leave comments if you're tuning in. We certainly will get back to what I call Rev Kev's Amen Corner over there. So Will is picking up what you're putting down. Let's continue. So you were talking about this journey of redistribution, of giving back the the wealth that was ill-gotten through colonialism, enslavement, and extraction of the earth. How did you determine who you would reach and impact? Was there some direct line you were able to follow, or
mhm.
what was the way that you made your determinations?
Yeah. There's been a few different parts to that process. I think one of the things that I did initially, which has been so important, is get involved with organizations of other people doing this work around redistribution. I'm a member of two networks. One's called Resource Generation, which organizes young people with wealth and class privilege towards redistribution of money, land, and power. And that's a national organization in the US. And also the Solidaire Network, which has a really similar mission, organizing donors towards justice and liberation. And it was through those communities that I figured out that I was really not alone. And not only was I not alone in this present time, but in fact, across history, there's been people from, call it the owning or ruling or upper classes, who've been, some might say, like traitors to that class, or have chosen to stand with others and make different decisions than their ancestors did before. And so I've been so grateful to not go it alone. And yeah, shouts out to the other folks in that world of work. And through those organizations, they have partnerships. For instance, Resource Generation is partnered with the Movement for Black Lives. I'm going to turn off this beeping. Shh. Um, Partnered with the Movement for Black Lives national network of organizations working for Black liberation in the United States. And so some of the money I've moved has gone there. And part of following those threads has been looking at, okay, me as the person with wealth, with class privilege, like there's so much I can't see about what's needed right now. And so how can I get the resources in the hands of people that know what's needed right now? And the Movement for Black Lives is an example of that. Resources come in, and then the movement leaders who are involved with that look at, okay, when we're looking at all the campaigns, all the struggles, what we're working with across the country, how do we move these resources to respond right now? And so that part of kind of turning over the power has been so important to me. And at the same time, what I came to see was, if the only way that I'm moving money is by turning over the power over it to other people, there's some level of like relationality and accountability and intimacy and healing that won't get to be possible, that can only happen through like direct one-to-one relationship. And so it's also been like, yeah, a great privilege of my life to come into relationship with folks whose histories are on the other side of mine, who, whether their ancestors were like directly impacted by a direct ancestor of mine, I've had the privilege to be in some relationships like that where we figured out, oh, wow, like our ancestors knew each other or fought against each other in a war or,
Are you kidding me, Morgan? So
yeah,
you've got the through lines.
yeah,
Finding
that's,
what is that like? Let's slow this part down a little
yeah,
bit, and maybe, if you're willing, to kind of unpack what that kind of encounter is.
yeah.
One ancestor, one descendant, the descendants
Mhm.
having this conversation. How does that go?
Yeah. Um, yeah, the kind of first story that comes to mind for me was, a number of years ago, I was at a conference here in the Bay Area where I live, and I heard 2 people sharing about their vision to return to their, native homelands and to build an eco-village to preserve their language and culture. And as I was listening to them describe their vision, it was like full shivers up and down my body. And I was so awkward. I was like, "Hi, my name's Morgan. Nice vision." But things turned into, others, and, uh, later on, I had the chance to encounter those same folks again, and I happened to be sitting next to the wife of a husband-wife pair, and the presentation ended, and I turned to her, and I was like, "Okay, I have to come up with something to say how compelled I am. Just feel in my body right now how compelled I am to support what they're doing." And she turned to me and said, "I think you're supposed to come visit us." And that relationship has unfolded from there. And it was about a year later that I learned, remembered, put the puzzle pieces together that one of my ancestors fought in the war that removed their people from their homelands.
Mhm.
That genocidal act that they're still trying to recover from. And yeah, that moment for me of learning learning that connection was it was both devastating, like I was torn open by it, and it was so powerfully affirming of, like, when I feel those full body shivers, like, I have to listen, that, like, there's a trust that I need to have in my intuition, in my relationship with mystery that's pulling me towards healing that could be possible. And
Mhm.
and when I called those folks to be like, "Well, I found this history," they were kinda like, "Yeah, of course, yeah, like, the ancestors bring us together, that's how it works."
Okay, so let's acknowledge the ancestors in the room for a minute. Okay,
Mhm,
so we've just crossed into the cosmological, the spiritual, the mystical that I think is so worth talking about because there's a dimension of you that's being guided
mhm,
in your work. Talk to us a little bit about your approach to this spiritually
mhm,
and what what your spiritual practice is and how you stay open and in tune for that guidance.
mhm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Rev Kev, you mentioned we met at Harvard Divinity School, and it was, yeah, this work that brought me there. When folks asked me, "What are you doing here at Harvard?" I would say, "Oh, I'm here to study the spiritual dimension of the reparations work required of white descendants of colonizers and enslavers." And folks would usually go, "Ooh." But and
And you
I'm
said just that calmly.
um,
You said with just that level of, grace, but it's a mouthful.
yeah, it's huge. It's violence, it's trauma, it's healing, it's possibility, it's all of it. And yeah, for me, I mean, I described one of the moments of just profound synchronicity, grace that has shaped my life, and it's been a journey of learning to do the listening that leads me in the direction that I need to go, and, um, trusting that synchronicity, trusting the moments that feel, like, outside of time, and part of that has been, like, turning towards my ancestors and, um, yeah, acknowledging that, like, for all the harm they might have caused or been part of in their lifetimes on this earth, that at least some of them, I believe, in spirit, in the ancestral realm, like, are deeply invested in that legacy changing.
Mhm,
That there's some sense for me of, like, "Oh, these people, here's my people on the wall. These
mm,
people can't rest without this work being done on their behalf."
mm,
And and so I mentioned, that initially my father felt like I was disowning our family at this point, and I think he's come to see this too, like, I feel so close to my ancestors. I feel so profoundly in their stories. I've read their journals and visited their places and know their children's names, and other folks in my family aren't doing that. Like, when my grandfather died, like, I'm now the family historian, but I'm doing it in this different way.
mhm.
Mhm.
I can see that, and I can see that and you took the words out of my mouth that
Mm,
you are an ambassador on behalf of your ancestors, and I was curious, you know, if you did bring that up to your father, because 'cause I'm imagining, I remember my daughter, said that, and I'm Rev Kev, you know, I don't know if I believe in God. I might be an atheist, and I had to look at this being that came through me, you know,
Mhm.
and take 10 steps back to kind
Mhm.
of be open to who she was and is and
Mm,
what she came here to show me,
mhm,
and I get that this
mhm,
story is as much as it is a story about um, correcting and healing these histories. I see a profound transformational story of father and daughter
mm,
in the ways in which you both are helping shape and transform each
mm,
other through this unique history.
mm.
So
Wow,
I
thank
was yeah, I was curious if if he's picked up the idea that
mhm.
you are an ambassador on assignment from your ancestors, his ancestors.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that story with your daughter. My daughter's 1, so she's not yet telling me things that are hard to hear.
Just you wait.
Just I wait,
If
but
you are at all fortunate, you will have a a a little bit of Morgan come through
Mhm,
that is uniquely all of who she is, that'll challenge you in ways
mhm.
that you've gifted your father and family.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just kidding, I don't know about that.
Yeah. But I will
Let
say, I'm always sensitive to sharing this story without my dad here to tell his side, you know? But
Mhm.
we did actually, for anyone that's interested, my dad and I did do a podcast together that you could search for. Um, it's on my website, or it's called "No More Money, Please," I think was what they titled it, which is not my message. Um, but that's a chance to hear from my dad
And we're
direct.
running it right now on the screen if you want
Okay.
to, hear that story. It's, through
Mhm.
National Public Radio, correct?
Yeah.
On their podcast, and Morgan and her father did get to share the story together, and that was gracious of him to, you
Mhm.
know, engage the process and recognize the uniqueness of it and the value that it would mean for all of us to hear the 2 of you, um, walk and talk through it. Um, you created, which was, I think, the dopest thing I ever experienced at Harvard. I experienced a lot of things, but Morgan created a course at Harvard. It
Mm.
was a 6-month cohort called, if I'm not mistaken, Ancestors and Money.
Mhm.
And some of us wanted to be in that class,
Mhm.
and I guess I wasn't, eligible in some way, shape, or form, but I made that up. But I just recall how incredible the buzz was around campus as people were, talking about what you were doing.
Mm.
Tell everybody what this course was, why you did it, and what some of the outcomes were.
Yeah. So for a couple years, I've been co-facilitating this learning journey called Ancestors and Money, and this space out in the world has been for folks living at the intersection of whiteness and wealth who want to reckon with enslavement and colonization. And yeah, I co-created this space with my friend, comrade Justine Epstein because we needed this space. We were, as I mentioned, deeply involved with these organizing spaces and networks and folks moving money. And we felt this longing and this hunger for a space for the deeper questions beneath the work, the relationship to ancestors, the relationship to spirit, to the land, to how do we really move with, like, the biggest feelings that come up as we look at these histories? Like, what do we do with our rage? What do we do with our guilt and the shame that can immobilize us? What do we do when we feel numb in the face of it all? And so we created this space to be in that with people and to support them to walk the next step of their journey in relationship to their wealth. And so that space exists and is still happening. We're doing another one this fall out in the world. But while I was at Harvard, I said, well, what if this was a course? And our dear friend, mentor in common, Dean Melissa Bartholomew, mentored me to do an independent study to create an academic course out of the Ancestries and Money curriculum. So I took the curriculum and I threw in a bunch more books and writing, and then had the incredible opportunity to offer it as a course at Harvard the following semester. And so we had a beautiful group of people and, yeah, held that space in circle, sitting on the floor for folks to be with their histories, their family, their ancestry, their relationship to money, that and what's being called forth from them in at this time in response to these histories and our present moment of continuing injustice. And yeah, I'm so
How did people, you know, who enrolled, and I'm assuming these are white people with money or with legacies similar to your own. They're there. How are they hearing this? How are they, encountering these readings and
Mhm,
some of the deep dive discussions that I'm sure you took them on?
mhm.
How's it being received?
Yeah. So I find the folks that show up to my work, and this was true at Harvard and also out in the world, that often they're being torn up inside already.
Mm,
They're sitting with who they are, their family, the choices they've made thus far in their life, and then they're being influenced and changed, whether it's through our social movements that are working to change narratives, whether it's through, like, the racial justice uprising in 2020. What's happening in, the world is pushing on people and breaking their hearts and changing them, and then often they feel alone. They feel like, "I'm the only person with my identities who cares about this," or they feel like, I can't talk about this to anyone because who wants to hear about my feelings as a white, wealthy person? Or who wants to hold me as I cry about this? Like, this isn't mine to cry about." And so there's a lot of, yeah, suppression, self-hatred, guilt, like, yeah, shrinking that happens. And our intention with this space is to create a space where that can be, like, unfurled and let out, and folks can recognize, like, I'm not alone and I can be brave, and that if there's gonna be an antidote to this guilt and this shame, it's gonna be action. And
mm,
if I find my way through to doing something in alignment with my values that's a gesture towards repair, like, that might be healing for me too. And so we explore all that in the course, and I think folks find a sense of relief to have a place to talk about that.
Well, I have to um, recall a moment at the
Mhm,
conclusion of one of your courses. You invited me to like the class wrap dinner or something like that.
mhm,
And you were on one side of the table, and I was on the other side of the table with members of your class. And the conversation was, I think my eyes just kept getting bigger as I'm listening to conversations that sounded like unbelievable. People were saying things like, "Yeah, I've so far I've returned like 6 million dollars. We've been able to, locate the descendants of, that our families harmed. But I've got family. My kids don't want to get involved in the return, so I'm not able to do as much as I want to do." And around the table there was all of this conversation about redistribution and return and about folks finding Black financial planners in particular who would aid them in how to best return it and invest and all. It was just, and I'm going, what am I? What did Morgan invite me to? And this was an outcome of your class. Is this typical of the kind of result that happens?
Mm. Yes. Yeah, those are the sorts of things folks are working on, and yeah, everyone moves at their own pace, and folks come to our work who their experience of inherited wealth is, like, tens of thousands of dollars, and folks come where their experience is tens of millions of dollars, so there's
Right.
many different scales that are happening.
Well,
Um,
actually, and hold that thought. There
yeah.
was a moment of that at the table.
Mhm.
So one, there were I literally was just seeing millions being this is, and they were just talking like we were talking about, having chicken for dinner. I mean, yeah, millions of turning. And one lady said, "Well, I haven't given that much back. I'm not that rich. I've only done like
Mm.
2 million or whatever it was." I'm like,
Mhm.
"All right, stop." I literally said, "Stop right now." I'm like, if you have to say you're not that rich, you're rich enough."
Yeah, the folks are moving at many different scales, and that I think it's important to say that, yeah, all someone gave me once the provocation that all wealth is stolen, and I think that's a good place to start from, to see that, yeah, anywhere that something has accumulated, somewhere else it had to shrink, that energy on our earth is finite, and if it grew here, it had to be taken from somewhere, and so for anyone that is experiencing, "I have more than enough," or it doesn't feel like enough, but I know I have more than most people," we can define that as wealthy, and that, yeah, folks get drawn to this work from that experience of, "I know that I'm implicated in some sort of way," and I've been so moved in my work to see how sometimes the biggest, bravest moves come from the folks who have less. That folks who start with $100,000 are like, clear, like, "I need to move all of this, like, I know that it's not mine." And sometimes it's the folks that have even more money that have a harder time letting go. We might predict that. Um, so, um, it's been a great, yeah, privilege of my life to walk with people on those stories and to see what's true for this person now, because if the money they're moving is coming from this place of obligation or guilt or shame, it won't be a sustainable form of commitment from that person. And I would even say perhaps like the healing possibility of that movement will fall short. But when it comes from like, yeah, I'm called, I'm compelled, I know, like, this is my truth and my authenticity to move, to let go at this time. I think that's where we see, um, yeah, both more reliable, sustainable support for the projects and people that need it right now, and yeah, the greater potential for healing.
If you're just joining us, you've been listening to and watching Meet the Game Changers. I'm your host, Rev Kevin. Our guest today is Morgan Curtis, and she's been taking us deeply into her riveting story of restoration, redistribution, and repair. Her book, Decolonial Dames of America. You want to say more about that?
Oh, there's the book. I call it the Little Red Book, so they you can see it. Um, yeah, this was originally an essay I had a chance to write while Rev Kev and I were students together. And it follows one thread of my family story. My great grandmother was a member of a lineage pride organization called the Colonial Dames of America that still exists today. And this essay is my exploration of what a decolonial Dames of America might stand for. What is it for those of us who have this lineage, this history, these millions of us who are connected to these early settler times and the way they shaped this country? What would it be like for those of us to gather together deliberately in service of repair and healing and truth telling? That instead of the only people who are claiming that history and claiming that lineage to be the ones that are putting it in service of white supremacy and xenophobia, what if we also took a claim to that lineage but put it in service of a very different possibility? So that's what I explore in that little book, and you can read it online on my website, and I have a small handful of copies left. If anyone wants one, you can write to me. They're offered as a gift.
Now, how did the colonial dames of America respond to
Hmm.
your decolonized version of them?
Hmm. Thus far, the folks from the colonial dames that have reached out to me have been the ones who are open to what I'm saying. Um, so I had a great uh, serendipitous realization that someone that actually was in my Ancestors and Money class at Harvard was a member of the colonial dames. And she introduced me to some of the staff in the Massachusetts chapter. And then recently I had another conversation with someone who used to work for the colonial dames and was trying to support them to tell a fuller story of enslavement in the properties that they have as museums, and eventually quit because there wasn't openness to telling the story in the way that she thought it needed to be. So, yeah, not my intention to try and transform that organization from the inside, but instead to offer a counterpoint.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
You offered the counterpoint.
Yeah.
And but you're making some influence. Let's look at what's happening in Rev Cav's Amen corner over here. We're getting some comments. Shelby says it's powerful to have a healing place. And Rolo says, a course for this? Amazing. Everyone should be having these conversations. We could all be better off, I think. And then Ian M says, wow. Shelby says, thank you. So people are feeling what's happening here in this conversation as something that's meaningful and necessary and good trouble in and of it, its own way. Morgan, let's bring it to today a little bit, okay? Because right now we are seeing um, white supremacy going wild in this current administration. People are witnessing what it looks like to have wealth and money and
Mhm.
power and have it be unleashed in the service of the most um, what for many people that I think you and I, roll with would be the most detestable goals.
Mhm.
How does your work kind of come into conversation with what's going on today?
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The What we're seeing right now is kind of the latest expression of a long story of the power that whiteness and wealth has in this country. That it was founded upon like concentrating power in the hands of those who were landowners, who were white, who had wealth, and that is just continuing. And it has a particular claim on power and dominant cultural narratives right now. And I think what I see my work as is, again, as not letting the entire story of what whiteness and wealth means be taken up by those who want to put it in service of continued power and authoritarianism, but to offer it could be something else, and that something else is yeah, following the leadership of those who have, yeah, always been the ones most, impacted, extracted from by this history. How do we listen to our Black movement leaders, our Indigenous movement leaders, our immigrant and migrant communities? How do we listen to folks who know how to survive these times because they've always had to, and put our solidarity there and put our trust that something else could happen that doesn't look like this, yeah, death spiral of this continual quest for power. And so, yeah, the work that I do is deep and slow. It's the work of making us different over time. And so, as I sit with like, what does this political moment mean for my work? I think about this political moment as 400 years, not just the 4-year election cycle. We've been in this story for a long time, and we need to respond at the depth that that asks of us.
Wow. Deep and slow. I really honor your approach to that and your sobriety, about what it's going to take and the time it's going to take, and that you're not, in your work seeking to be white savior, but you're clear that you have something of an alternative to what we've been seeing. You talked about listening to Black voices, listening to um, people who have Indigenous histories. And you're not just somebody who says that, you actually live, work, and worship in a very unique community in the middle of Oakland that I got a chance to visit. Tell everybody about how you live at Canticle Farms and what is that place all about in relationship to the ways in which you stay informed and connect.
Mhm. Yeah, my spiritual, political, literal home is a intentional community in Oakland that's been here in various forms for about 40 years. And it's a deliberately multiracial, cross class, interfaith, intergenerational, many gender community. It's living with a prayer of how to learn how to live together across all of our differences. And that is so hard. I often say, like, when things are going well here, the, like, healing and connection and relationship that I've been able to be part of and to witness has, um, yeah, given me more hope than anything else I've experienced. And when it's going badly, when we're hurting each other, when we're triggering each other, when we're, yeah, falling short of our intentions to be together in a good way, that has me, like, really touch into, yeah, the despair of, like, this is so hard. Like, what we've been handed and what we're up against is so hard. And ultimately getting to live where I get to feel those extremes, like the possibility of where we could go, the healing that could happen, and, like, the depth of the difficulty of it. I'm so grateful to get to feel those, and that's what living in this community has offered to me.
I was struck while I was there by this room that is designed. I forget the exact name of it, but it's where people go to address conflict and confront their differences. What is that room called?
The restorative justice room, RJR.
The restorative justice room, but it's the space where people go in to find a way to resolve their differences. Is that it? Or to make repair or to heal?
Yeah, so it's a room that has a big window looking out to the garden, and it's, yeah, it's a space for conflict transformation work, for giving each other feedback and sharing our stories. And a teacher of the community said, you gotta have a kitchen in your community because people need to eat, and you'll probably have bedrooms because people need to sleep, and you need to have a space for transforming conflict because that's also an inevitable part of being human and being community together. And so, what is it to allow our conflicts and our tensions and our processes ultimately, hopefully, bring us closer together rather than tear us apart? And that's the intention of that room.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to and watching Morgan Curtis, who is our guest today on Meet the Game Changers. I'm your host, Rev Kev. Morgan, tell our listeners and viewers as we wrap this segment what it is that your work is all about in a nutshell. If you have to make it really pithy and short.
Ooh, um, I mean, the shortest version I ever say is I work with white, wealthy people who are interested in redistribution through a reparations lens. But that's the surface level. And
Right.
beneath that, it's, yeah, those of us that are interested in turning towards our histories, telling the truth about them, bringing our people and ancestors with us towards justice, healing, liberation, repair.
Mm. And indeed, you're doing this work, and I'm so proud of it. In Rev Kev's Amen Corner over here, I see Brittany Graves who says, it's refreshing to hear her say that this type of work is slow and deep. Many want fast answers and quick solutions when turning around these kinds of belief takes time and intention, and
Yeah.
especially integrity at a time when it is so easy to turn a blind eye. Thank you for speaking up and leading these conversations. Kim Treadwell says, thank you for being so open and supportive. And Impeccable says, sounds like a great room. Morgan has been in that room. I can hear the healing in her speech. And then Tony says, I can't see his oh, share your referral link. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, Tony says it all comes down to greed. It all comes down to greed.
Mm.
Thank you all so much for your comments, for weighing in, for giving us feedback. Morgan, I think it's a perfect time for people to find out how they can stay connected with you. How do
Mhm.
people get in touch and connect? Maybe visit you at Canticle Farms or
Yeah.
uh, and jump in one of your courses as they are able. Tell us.
Yeah. Um, as I mentioned before, I have a website and there's a contact form, and I really welcome hearing from folks how this is landing for you and learning from you and your stories and experiences. And for folks who feel like the work I've been talking about is yours to do, like you're called to also be on this path. I That we have the applications open now for the next Ancestors and Money cohort that will start this fall. Um, and yeah, whether or not you're interested in that space, I'm always happy to connect with folks and point you towards other resources, communities, places to not go the work alone because we need each other. So please be in touch.
Morgan, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh no.
Just a tiny bit as we close this out, because
Okay.
it would really put a signature on this moment and moments that we've shared in spaces, certainly during our time at Harvard. You would sometimes close us with a song, a little something that brought us into the heart space,
Mm,
and it's just something I really feel would be a
mm.
great way to wrap this.
Thank you, Rev Kev. I'm one of those people who, like, never sing ever because the choir teacher was like, "You should mouth the words."
You sang
And the
all over Harvard. What are you
and
talking
I'm saying that was me, and I've been on a journey, and now I'm willing to sing, so you're asking me at the right moment. I wanna offer a little song that comes from my dear friend, comrade, collaborator in all this work, Justine. Um, this one's called "I Trust Deeply." I trust deeply in my life as a prayer. May I be well used. May I be well used for healing, liberation, and repair. I trust deeply in this life as a prayer. May I be well used. May I be well used for healing, liberation, and repair.
Beautiful. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
for
asking.
being a guest on Meet the Game Changers. Thank you for your gentle spirit, but your
Mm,
powerful footprint on the
mm,
planet at this time, and for the slow and deep commitment that
mhm,
is breaking up the foundation and the places and spaces where you carry your
mm.
light.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so much
Rebecca.
for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for, yeah, just welcoming me and inviting me forward and seeing me. I'm just grateful for your leadership and, yeah, the capacity of your heart and your ancestors to hold this story with me.
And we've only just begun.
Mhm.
So thanks for tuning in to Meet the Game Changers today. Keep asking the hard questions. Keep living like it matters. And as we close out this first season, this season one, remember changing the game isn't a moment, it's a movement. And we're just getting started. Until next time, go out there and you change the game.
This is Meet the Game Changers with Rev Kev, where we dive into the stories of people transforming our world one bold move at a time.